What would you do with £1 billion? If you ask this a pharmaceutical company, their answer would be quite simple. We develop a drug. One drug. However, the lab to patient road for this drug will be still quite long and quite hilly. And the reason for this is that in Europe, drugs are mainly accessible for patients if they are being reimbursed by the government. Of course, governments have limited resources, so they can't support and reimburse all drugs out there. So they will ask pharmaceutical companies to support them with evidence, which will show that the drugs are actually improving the quality of life of patients. This is usually done by clinical trials, which are performed by the companies. The point is, you have to do a lot of them, and they are quite expensive, and can sometimes run even over years if you want to show the long-term implications. So it's quite sufficient and quite obvious that smart trial design is important for pharmaceutical companies to save a lot of money and time in this reimbursement decision process. And this is where my faculty project, IQVIA, a tech-based healthcare consultancy, which works closely with pharmaceutical companies, comes in. We picked one very specific aspect of clinical trial design, the location, where to perform the trials actually, and asked a very specific question, which is, does domestic research help to get a positive reimbursement decision? We're asking this very specific question because in France and Germany, over the last 10 years, there's a tendency that drugs which have been tested in these countries have 20% higher chances to get a positive decision and get access to these markets. And the question is that really the dominant factor, or what is driving these reimbursement decisions? To do this and to answer this question, we look at this relationship. We try to understand what drives the reimbursement based on data which comes from what disease are we trying to cure, what is the disease burden, how are the trials designed, what is the outcome, how does the drug perform. To do this, we use random forest, which learns this relationship and maps it. This is, however, not enough, because we are interested not in making predictions, rather than trying to understand the past decisions and explain why they were made. To do this, we borrow something called SHAP, which comes from game theory, and this will help us to explain the predictions made by the model. There's an elephant in the room, however, and this is accuracy. We need to make sure our model is accurate enough so we can trust that it's reliable. In our case, we're looking at France or Germany. This is the case. We have very high accuracy for both, and we can move on to do the analysis. What is SHAP? Well, SHAP just quantifies how important is a specific feature on increasing the probability that your drug is reimbursed in a specific country. We can do this, try to understand it better, doing an example and a baseline. For France, for example, we can look at how important is it that a drug is labeled safe. As expected, and as we all hope probably, if the drug is safe, that will help the reimbursement decision, and it's more likely it's going to have a positive outcome. In this case, roughly 20%. In contrast to that, if the drug is not labeled as safe, this will harm the decision, and it's more likely your appraisal gets rejected. So we can do the same thing now and ask, well, how important is it to include domestic data? And it shows, of course, it's way more narrow, around 0. However, in some cases, it can be quite beneficial to include data and can help you up to 5% to achieve a positive outcome of your decision. We can do the same thing for Germany, and we see, well, drugs is safe is basically the same picture, a bit less narrow. However, then you go to the domestic data, and we also are aware that in this case, it doesn't really matter anymore if you include domestic data or not. So SHAP is a very beautiful approach that can show us that in one country, different factors may play different roles, in this case, the domestic data. But we can do way more. We can ask what really drives this decision. And that's exactly what I did. I clustered all my features into 4 different categories and summed all the SHAP values up and asked what are the most important aspects for Germany and France. If we do this, we find that in France, what's most important, valued most highly, is the safety and toxicity of the drug. In comparison to that, in Germany, it's most important that the drug actually outperforms placebo or the competitor of this drug. And this way, if pharmaceuticals can really benefit from this knowledge and really tailor their clinical trial design to access certain markets. And this brings me to the impact of this work, which is basically trying to make this lab-to-patient road a bit less rocky for pharmaceutical companies and the drug itself. We do this by this automated workflow, which I just showed, which is of course transferable to other countries. So we're not limited to Germany or France. We can use that for any country we have data for, basically, which will then hopefully make these national reimbursement decisions more transparent, not only to pharmaceutical companies, but to the broad public. And of course, in the end, this will help the pharmaceutical companies as well to make intelligent investment decisions and save money, time, and spend some more time on, more development, more research to fight diseases and so on. Thanks for listening.